Well, hello, everybody. Welcome back. It's another Tuesday night, which means that Daniel and I are here with you for another Talk Openly. So glad you're here.
I'm so glad you're here, Jack. It's nice to see you and hear your friendly voice.
Aw, thanks. Yeah, same to you. It brightens my day. It's kind of like I come home and see my cat, and I'm immediately just like, oh, that's right, friendship.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Kind of like that.
And you know what I think is kind of amazing about friendship, just like with the cat doesn't have to do anything, right?
Yeah.
It just has to be itself and it has to be in relation with you, and that's enough.
It is. It is. It's just totally enough.
Right.
Oh, glad that we can do that for each other. Yeah, and also, even though we don't get to see the audience, I feel like you're here with us too. And I appreciate that, your friendship.
You know what I think is really cool about it too, Jack? Kind of riffing off of our last show talking about time. I was thinking about it, the admonishment to be present and, be here in this moment, right? When does now start and when does it end? So it's like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like, is it like a nanosecond? Is it like a minute? Or does it not have a beginning and end? And if it doesn't have a beginning and end, that means that our audience, including those that are going to be listening later on the podcast, are here with us now.
That's true. I love it. Well, welcome, future and present friends.
Maybe even past.
Yeah, totally.
I don't know.
Sweet. Well, we're going to be talking tonight about a huge topic, right? We're going to be talking about forgiveness. And I imagine we'll kind of, talk some about self-forgiveness, forgiveness of others, how this works in dharma practice and everyday life. So I'm looking forward to it, Daniel. I feel like we could probably talk for hours about this topic.
Yeah, maybe we should. Let's go all night.
Yeah. We'll have a sleepover Talk Openly. That'd be fun. Hey, that's an idea.
There we go. Yeah, just a live stream that never ends. We just stay on one thread the whole night.
I'm into it. I'm a coffee drinker, so if I have an excuse to have more coffee, especially in the afternoon or evening, it's game on.
Oh yeah, well, guess what? I also drink coffee, but for the most part, I'm a tea drinker nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
And a friend of mine in India he encouraged me. He said, I was telling him about enjoying matcha green tea and how energizing it is. It's very sort of high in caffeine and whatnot. And he said, oh, you got to try it the way that we make our tea here in India. And he gave me this recipe, and I just got to try it today. So first, I used this special black tea blend that he told me about, and then cook up, like, boil water with ground ginger, and ground lemongrass together.
Ooh.
Right. So first, you boil the water with that for a while, for like 5 minutes or so, and then you put the tea in. You let it sort of simmer for a minute. Then you put just a little splash of milk, and that's it. And it was amazing. It was so good.
Oh, that sounds good. I can imagine having it with those little syrup covered donuts they have, like gulab jamun. Have you ever had that?
No, but now I want it.
Go to an Indian restaurant as soon as you can and order some gulab jamun. You can even have it before dinner because it's so good.
Well, can I I don't know, one of those services like DoorDash or something? Maybe I can get it while we're having the show.
That'd be fantastic. I'd be jealous though.
Okay, that won't do it. I don't want to cultivate jealousy here.
Oh yeah, well maybe it'd be a good practice for me.
Maybe.
Yeah, I have an aunt who is Pakistani, and she makes them homemade, and they're just like, oh, so good. I miss that. But
wow,
fun stuff. Well, Daniel, tell me about you. What's your week been? What's new? How's life? How's practice? Give us the rundown.
Things are pretty good. I've noticed I'm re-energized in my meditation practice. I don't think it's for any particular reason. I don't think there's any cause or condition that I can think of. I
Yeah.
think it's sort of just like I notice in myself these cycles, right? Like just ups and downs, ups and downs. And sometimes it's situational, of course, like, but sometimes it's just like, I don't know, maybe it's hormonal, maybe it's the weather,
Yeah.
maybe I don't know what it is. I can't even fathom it, right? Like sometimes I'm down, sometimes I'm up, right? And when I'm down, I still practice, but I notice, like lately, like I've been sort of, like my mind's been sort of like busy, but not like I don't know quite how to describe it, but it's like full, but not like pointed in any way, right?
Mm.
And kind of just like distracted, I guess, is a good way to put it. And I noticed that that's all shifted. I feel, quite a different sort of emotionally, like in my mood and my outlook, my perspective. I feel sort of buoyed, and I noticed that, and correspondingly, my meditation, my sits are I'm much more enthusiastic for it. So
Mm.
I'm like happy to be sitting down, and I'm very sort of clear in my sit. And even if there are distractions, they don't have the same feeling to them. They
Yeah.
have a qualitative difference to them. So I'm happy for that. I know, it does. I'm not like, this too shall pass. So,
Hmm.
sometimes the clouds will be there, sometimes they won't be there. I get it.
Right.
But
Right.
so right now it's a nice sunny day outside and inside.
Nice.
Yeah, yeah. So that's all good. I'm happy about that. What about you?
Yeah, I'm a little stormier.
Okay.
Stormier in mind. That's kind of a hard word to say. It's stormier.
Stormier.
Stormier. But yes, so I'm a little more cloudy, I'll say that. Um, my stuff is also cyclical. I used to deal with depression very, very badly. And I'm kind of on the bipolar spectrum. And so I know that it's inevitable that I'm going to have these dips as well as highs, kind of like
Yeah.
you were mentioning. And yeah, I'm just really in a dip right now. And I think part of it too, like, so it is cyclical. And then part of it too is situational, because I've talked about it many times on the show where um it's a drag for me to get to work. Like my commute is just really, really long. Um and also been feeling like this kind of like just really stuck. And I've got one more year of school left before I can advance in my career and be a social worker and whatnot. And so I just feel like I'm in that kind of like limbo mode where I'm dissatisfied with a lot that's happening around me. And at the same time, like today, I really made this decision, maybe because I knew that I was going to be talking about it on the show. So I love that the show like helps me kind of like reframe my mind.
It's a catalyst.
It is, yeah. Um, but I really like made the decision like, okay, today's gonna feel shitty. Like I can just feel it. Today's gonna feel shitty. So how about like instead of getting like totally wrapped up in that and pulled by it, what if I can just observe? Like if I can just really feel, what does it feel like to feel shitty? What does it feel like to be in this like kind of, you know, and this is very exaggerated, but it feels kind of like a purgatory state, where I'm just like, I'm just trudging along. Um, and it was interesting, I noticed that within a few hours of just kind of being like, yeah, this is what it feels like. This is hard, and my mood just kind of lifted off, and there was less of of that burden. And less kind of like this feeling of just like weight being on me. So yeah, dharma works.
Yeah, it does.
It really does. I really have to listen and practice what my teacher tells me to practice. And when I do, it's inevitable that if I really kind of commit myself to that, it's going to change how I see my world, and how I feel about it. So it's actually quite beautiful. Like my return ferry ride home, I just watched the water the whole time. And oftentimes I'll be doing work on my laptop, getting my hours in, so I don't have to do more later. But today I was just like, no, I want to sit here. Like, this is gorgeous. This is,
Yeah.
I like my commute is actually amazing.
Right.
Like I should, but really, like, when I really think about it, I have no complaints other than that it takes a long time. But otherwise it's gorgeous. I can look at the people around me. Like today I was just looking at everyone and I was thinking, oh yeah, these are like all my loved ones. Like all of these people have been my loved ones, in various forms. And so yeah, it was just like, oh right, that's what it's like. That's what it's like for me to really apply dharma. Is not just when things are feeling good and I can look around and be like, oh yeah, but the world is, everything is beautiful and people are wonderful. But when I can do that and see the beauty in others when I'm not feeling well, yeah, it was just good. It was a dharma win today.
Oh my, that sounds so amazing. I love it. The part that I find so kind of instructive, encouraging, and just like a good reminder is that, those, having the shitty clouds, you can't push them away, right? They're like, you really can't. You can try all you want to push them away. You can't push them away. But if you bring the light of your own awareness to it, it'll burn off, right?
Yeah.
And it's kind of fascinating because that's one of the things that we learn when we're meditating is we can bring our mind to anything, to a physical pain, to an emotional state, to a thought, to anything.
Yeah.
And we can bring awareness to it. And what's so amazing is when we bring awareness to it, we learn the truth of impermanence and emptiness, right? Like we see that the clouds are fleeting. And yeah, actually, what feels like a shitty moment right now, the shitty moment that comes after it is a little bit different. It feels a little bit different, right? And the one that comes after it feels maybe a little bit lighter sometimes, right? Maybe not as. And then by the end of the day, we're chilling, watching the waves and the people and reflecting on how we love them. And like, that's how you do, that's transformation right there, right? You're doing spiritual alchemy on your commute.
Yeah. Thanks, Daniel. That was motivating.
You were motivating. You're the one who said it.
Well, I'm trying to, so like I'm trying to also see the clouds in their own beauty too.
That's
like
right.
that's I really want to contact that, knowing that you know that has its own, use and value, whatever you want to say about it. Bringing in that equanimity, like, okay, it's not just the sunny skies or the happy times that I'm looking for. It's how can I experience all of it, and really be aware.
That's exactly it. You can't bring awareness to it in order to burn it off, to make it go away, right? You can simply bring awareness to it and see it as it is. And when you see it as it is, sometimes there's something quite remarkable there, even in the scary, even in the dirty, even in the stuff that we tend to sort of not want around us.
Totally. That just reminded me of I don't, I know you were at the Vajrayogini empowerment. And I don't know if anyone else watching was at that at Lions Roar in Sacramento. But we did this, like kind of all day empowerment with Vajrayogini, who's this incredible, like powerful Dakini goddess, basically. And there's a little a handout that we were given, and there's an insert in there that describes how Vajrayogini wants everything. She wants to bring everything to her.
That's right.
She wants the dirty, the smelly, the happy, the sad, the disturbed, all of it. And that's just, it's such a good reminder. Like, okay, that's what I'm going for. Like, I'm not trying to push any of it out. I'm bringing it in, and I can handle it, you know, at least, you know, when I'm, you know, in that state of awareness. Yeah.
Ah, so good. That's a good reminder. I love that. I love that little insert. I sometimes bust it out when those things, when those clouds appear, you know, and I'm like, go like, oh, what is it that she likes again? What does she want to get? And then I'm like, oh, that's right.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of, it tames the mind a little bit. Yeah.
right. A lot sometimes.
A lot of it. Oh man. Well, yeah, speaking of taming the mind,
Shall we?
shall we try?
Are we going to?
Let's do some Lojong.
All right, let's do it. We are
Yeah.
already doing a little bit of mind training here. It sounds like you spent a whole day doing it, but maybe we can do some Lojong slogan. Let me, if I can share the screen.
Yeah, and this is for those who don't know, this is a resource we have on the Lions Roar website. It's really a fabulous resource. It's a Lojong slogan generator. So you press this button and it comes up with a random one. It's so fun.
Did I ever tell, I think I may have told you this, but I just find it remarkable that I had spent some time trying to find a mobile app that did this, and I couldn't find one anywhere. I had all kinds of Lojong everything, but not one that was just a random generator. And it turns out it was right here underneath my nose.
That's so funny.
Yeah, our friend Dirk built this.
Dirk, you're brilliant.
Yeah,
we love
Dirk.
you.
Yeah, we should have him back on the show again.
That would be great. Yeah.
All right, so are we going to push the button?
Let's try it.
See what happens. Hey.
Okay.
Yeah, wait, this is the same one we had last time.
Is it? Does that mean we have to like dig in deeper? I think so, right?
I think so. I don't think you can do the random thing twice.
You can't.
That's trying to force it. That's trying to push it. Why don't you go tell us what it is?
So 45, acquire the 3 root causes. So according to Trellag Kyabgon, the 3 causes are 1, the spiritual friend, 2, the spiritual instructions, and 3, a supportive environment. And I'm wondering if our karma tonight and our karma of last week is just really trying to tell us and tell the audience here that this is important. These are huge. And to recognize that, like, within this temple, and I know not everyone watching it attends the temple, but that we have access to these things. And that is so rare. So I wonder if that's just what is happening.
I gotta say, I think that okay, so what you just said is sort of a reflection of what we were saying last week, which was our own great gratitude for having acquired the 3 root causes. But actually what it says is acquire the 3 root causes, right?
Like make it happen.
You make it happen. So on the one hand, if you don't have a spiritual friend, if you have not yet received or heard or listened to their spiritual instructions, or you don't find yourself in a supportive environment, then maybe if you're hearing this, think about how you can go about acquiring those things. And I think for those of us who believe that we already have these 3 root causes, how do we keep them alive in our lives? You know, like it's not a one-time thing, right? You know, these, you know, having this spiritual friend, of what value is it? What's our relationship like? It's an active, dynamic relationship. The spiritual instructions, what's the point of having like an instruction manual if it's, you know, if it's like lost in a box somewhere, right? Or if you don't follow it, right? Have you ever put together IKEA furniture and thought that you could just do it on your own because you you just know like how it goes, and then before you know it, you're like taking the whole thing apart again, and now you get the instructions out, right? Yep. So you know, there's that aspect of it. And a supportive environment is not something that's static either. And it's not something that just comes to us. We are part of building it. We're part of making the supportive environment.
That's right.
So what does that mean, both in terms of our life situation? So for me, for example, one of the things that's supportive of of dharma practice for me personally is to maintain some cleanliness in my home, and that's not something that comes easily. I'm a messy guy, right? Like I'm kind
Yeah.
of lazy. I'm like, yeah, man, it's all right. But I notice actually that, like it's much more conducive to my practice if things are a little neat, a little bit more orderly, right? So it encourages me to
Yeah.
put things. I'm just talking little things, right? So my point
Yeah.
is that like we shouldn't fall into this trap that we have already acquired it as if it's a done deal. It's now
Yeah.
firmly in our possession and we can't lose it.
Great point. Yeah, that this is an active verb here.
That's right. That's right.
Make it
There's no
happen.
past tense here.
Yeah. Nice. All right.
All
Well,
right.
Lojong slogan generator, you're trying to tell us something. We appreciate it. And yeah, for
Yeah.
those who can't see, there's this incredible image. So each slogan comes with an image that's not necessarily linked to the slogan itself, but um, I think it says Manjushri with
Manjushri with his Sakti.
all right. Pretty
That's interesting.
cool.
You don't oftentimes, at least not me, I don't see Manjushri oftentimes in Union. Usually you see it as
Yeah,
a
that's
South.
gorgeous.
Yeah, that is. It's quite lovely. All right.
Wow.
That's enough of that. I'll get lost in that image for a bit.
Great. Well, we have some thinking to do then. Some thinking and some acting on
Okay.
acquiring those three root causes. So excellent.
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah.
All right, my friend. Well, forgiveness. You came up with this topic, and I'm curious if there was something that may have prompted it.
There was. There was.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. It was a discussion with a friend who told me that who was going through a hard time, um, and mentioned that they knew already what it was that they needed, but they just hadn't gotten there yet. They hadn't found it yet. And I was like, what's that? I was really surprised to hear that it was forgiveness. And this person had had something, tragic happen in their life, a lot of things that were out of their control,
Mm,
things that they wish had been under their control, or they wish they could have done something about. And the way things worked out, it wasn't advantageous, right? It didn't turn out to be good in some sense, right? And so they were wanting forgiveness for what they, to me, couldn't have done, right? And it got me thinking about this. I was like, that's a really fascinating thing, right? Like we think about forgiveness. First of all, we usually think about it in terms of forgiving somebody else, like people that have slighted us.
mm,
And then, when we think about forgiving ourselves, it's oftentimes for the things that we've done, right? Or maybe for the things that we didn't do, but something like there's this sort of assumption that we had some control. And in this case, it was kind of interesting because I was
mm,
like, man, I don't see how any of that was in here. I don't know what could have been done differently and what role forgiveness plays. And then surprisingly, like this wasn't planned, but then today I had a conversation with a completely different friend who was also going through a hard time, totally different kind of thing. And again, there, like in this case, it was a lot of it was twofold. It was a lot of people had harmed them
yeah,
recently, right? Like not just one person, but many people, had treated them badly, and they were treating themselves badly, right?
yeah,
Also, as a part of that, and so yeah, it seems sort of like seems like an important topic to discuss.
absolutely. Yeah, because when those kinds of things happen, when harm happens, or maybe, coming from our own side, when we maybe do something that we regret, there's such a burden that we carry, right? Um, and and it could even just be one moment in time, it could even just be just a minute, and it's something that we might carry for years and years and years.
Yeah.
And it's a heavy pack to carry.
Yeah, and it is a heavy load, and I think it's kind of interesting the way that it relates to Dharma practice is it seems like it's really tightly wound up with it. I had an interesting sit yesterday where I assume it was only just because the subject was on my mind, right? That I had an interesting thing show up where, you know, I this question of self-forgiveness showed up, and I was like, well, you know, what does this mean for me? And there was this, it was this really interesting sort of like thought, feeling, whatever you want to call it, that came up, where there was this deep recognition of the preciousness of the Mani jewel, right, of our Buddha nature, right? That is with it, we all have it, right? We all have this Buddha nature, and how precious it is, and how, you know, exquisite and beautiful and wonderful and amazing. And yet, for a long time, at least for an entire lifetime, if not for many millions of lifetimes, I have covered it up. I have obscured it, I've distorted it, I've ignored it, you know, all of this. And I had this deep, sort of profound, like in the beginning, I was like, oh, it kind of took my breath away a little bit. I was like, ooh, can I forgive myself for that? Can I forgive myself for what I've done, right? Like in the sense that, you know, when we think about the chain, right, of dependent origination, it starts with ignorance. So for example, can I forgive my confusion? Can I forgive my ignorance? And what about all that craving and attachment and aversion, the three poisons, right? Can I forgive myself for that? And what would that mean, right? If I did that? And it was it was this beautiful moment where I was just, it kind of took my breath away, like I said, where I was just like, ah, right, that's what we're doing here, because forgiveness is this, on the one hand, having to see it, you know, we can't ignore something and forgive it. We have to see it, we have to see it clearly, right? We have to accept that, yeah, that's right. That's right. There's my part that I had to play in it, and there's also just the conditions. It's just the way things are. Yes, that's the way it is, both because of me and because of not me. That's the way it is. Can I first come to accept that? Can I forgive the role that I've played in it? And can I subsequently let go of that stuff? Right? And how it was interesting how the stuff that needed to be forgiven, or the result of, you know, those three poisons, if you will, all that mud and everything, how it actually there was a certain sort of like appreciation for it too, right? Like you were talking about, you know, the dark clouds, right? Like, and having some equanimity towards it, right? Like there was a sense of sort of like everything sort of has its purpose, right? It has its place, right? So yeah,
this is how we come to the Dharma.
Yes.
This is our path, you know. We can't reject any of it.
No. And there's a lot there to work with, you know, because we've spent so much time. And, you know, can we forgive ourselves for not being faster, right? At shaking it off, right? You know, at polishing that jewel, or, you know, can we sort of like be okay with the fact that, like, hey, it took us a while to do this. It's going to take us a while.
Yeah, no, there, something that, really touched me, in what you were saying. It's just that feeling of like, oh my gosh, there's so much here that I'm responsible for. And yet I was also, I totally, you know, in the thick of my confusion. And going back to what you were saying about, you know, your friend who you were kind of like, I don't understand, you know, how you could see yourself as responsible here. But we do have to turn our lens towards those things that, you know, we feel like, gosh, I didn't intend to do all that harm. I didn't intend to, you know, cover up my Buddha nature. I didn't know, you know, but at the same time, like, we do need to take responsibility for it. And that doesn't mean that taking responsibility means to then pour shame all over ourselves, because that's not forgiveness, right?
No.
But yeah, you know, that idea that we need to forgive, and yet we also shouldn't forget. Because we commonly say like, oh, forgive and forget.
Oh yeah.
But actually, no, we really want to we want to maintain that awareness that, we really this is a tenuous space. And kind of like what we were saying with the Lojong slogan, is that we haven't just come here and now we're gonna, now we're bodhisattvas in training, and therefore we're good, we're golden, right? Like
That's right.
we continue our learning, and caring for one another, and not
That's
resting on whatever laurels we think we might have.
that's right. That's right. It's all a process, and I think that
Yeah.
was one of the things that I thought was really interesting in sort of thinking and preparing for this show is I'd actually never ever, I don't think ever in my life, given thought to forgiveness as anything other than an event. Right? It sounds like a discrete event.
Mm, yeah.
But it turns out that it's not, right? And we know this when we stop to think about it. We recognize, oh, right, sometimes forgiveness takes time, right? And it's actually this process, and it's one that has to be sometimes repeated multiple times, whether we're talking
Oh
about
yeah.
forgiving others or forgiving ourselves. And so I checked to see if there was any advice online about the process. Sometimes these things are
Mm,
broken down. And I thought the process that I saw, it was a 5-step process. I'm going to go ahead and just read what they are. I won't, we can unpack it a little bit if we want. But the process, it starts not with forgiveness, right? It started with uncovering and acknowledging emotions, right?
mm.
So that was the first, that's that awareness step, that first sort of just like feeling it, seeing it,
Yeah.
feeling the betrayal,
Like
feeling
kind of
the
being
hurt.
aware that there is a problem.
Look at
Saying,
it,
yeah.
bring the awareness to those clouds, right? Like you were talking about, like be with it, experience it, right? Uncover it, don't cover it up. And then step 2 is still not forgiveness. Step
Mm,
2 is deciding to forgive,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And I think that that's brilliant. It's
It's
brilliant. It's
hard.
not assumed. Of course not. And we can't say, well, I'm a forgiving person and therefore I just automatically forgive. I just forgive, forgive, forgive. Well, no, probably you're not forgiving if that's what you're doing,
Mm,
right? That you might be forgetting, right?
right.
You
Right.
might be doing something else, but it's not forgiveness if it's not an intentional action, a decision
Right.
on your part to actually do the forgiving, right? So
And that
step 2,
decision part, yeah, really having to decide, because, I can think of a handful of moments in my life where I kind of consciously decided not to forgive,
that's right.
right?
Yeah,
Where it
because you
was like,
still needed
no,
to
I
uncover and
will
work with those
not.
emotions, right?
Right, right. I was like,
Yeah,
I will not let go. And
yeah,
and I think a lot of it is because I don't want to think about it. I
yeah,
really don't want to think about it. I still don't want to think about some of these things.
yeah. That's right.
Yeah. So the
That's right.
decision, that's good.
Yeah, well, that's the thing is that we're gonna cycle this through a few times, right? So it's a multi-part process, and it's not a one-time through and done, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes maybe for
Damn it.
smaller events, but for some stuff, it maybe we'll be doing this for a while. But so
Yeah.
step 2 is deciding to forgive. Step 3 was working through the emotions, right? So yeah. Anyway, step 4, acceptance and release. That's where the actual forgiveness takes place. Is so that release
Mm-hmm.
is the forgiveness, right? That's when you go, yep, okay, right, that's how it is.
Mm,
I'm not going to hold on, let it go. And then past that, step number 5 is healing and growth, right?
mm-hmm.
And then we cycle through that again and again. And one of the things that you said, what's kind of funny is that I have on my door, on my back door, I have this thing, this card that somebody, I don't know who gave it to me. I think it might have been, I don't know how I got it. No idea. But anyway, it's on my door and it's called the Buddhist Prayer of Forgiveness. Have you ever heard this?
I haven't, no, but I'd love to hear it.
I have. Okay. So whenever I have friends who seem to indicate a need for forgiveness, I like to share this with them because,
Yeah.
yeah, it's beautiful. So it goes like this. If I have harmed anyone in any way, either knowingly or unknowingly, through my own confusions, I ask for their forgiveness. If anyone has harmed me in any way, either knowingly or unknowingly, through their own confusions, I forgive them. Here's the part I love. And if there's a situation I am not yet ready to forgive, I forgive myself for that. For all the ways that I harm myself, negate, doubt, belittle myself, judge, or be unkind to myself through my own confusions, I forgive myself. Isn't that, I mean, like that, it
That's
just
beautiful.
it just gets to the heart of it, because there's that, like you said, there's this sort of like, oh, but I'm not ready.
Right.
I'm not ready to forgive that.
Right.
Okay. Forgive yourself for not being ready to forgive.
Right.
Okay.
There's no force. There's no force, because we can't force forgiveness. Forgiveness has to be truly felt and experienced. It has to come down from the head to the heart. You know, because I can intellectualize so much about, you know, how, you know, a person is a bundle of their causes and conditions and karma and whatnot. And like, so inevitably people are going to end up harming me. But then when it's like the actual moment of harm, or like things that have been done to loved ones, you know, I just feel that concreteness, right? It becomes real. It becomes, no, that is solid. This person fucked up, you know, and I just want to hold on to it because it hurts. And I think this is so forgiving. It really is like the essence of forgiveness, to be like, yeah, you're in that. I'm in that, and I forgive myself for that.
And also, if you notice, what's repeated throughout is the cause of the harm in the poem. It repeatedly says due to confusion, due to ignorance, right? Because if we weren't confused, if we weren't ignorant, that harm wouldn't have taken place in the first place.
Right. One of my favorite quotes from Thupten Chodron. So Thupten Chodron is the abbess of Sarvasti Abbey in Eastern Washington. And she's really rad. She actually wrote this book called Working with Anger. That's kind of like this seminal text for me on forgiveness, basically. But something she loves to say is that, you know, if someone were truly happy, you know, like genuinely, deeply happy, in love with the world and the people around them, it would be strange, right, if they were to wake up and say, I'm so happy, I'm gonna go out and hurt someone today. You know, like, that's not what happens. It's just not what happens in a happy, content mind, maybe not even happy, but a content mind, right? And that just it resonates with me so much, and it also makes me mad, which I think is a good thing. It's a sign that is, you know, true, because it's something I have to work on, is like kind of resentment holding and grudge holding, and yeah, to know that like all the harm that I've received, it's just out of confusion and my own confusion.
Isn't it interesting how the grudges, the resentment, how that's part of the mud, right? That's covering up that jewel of our Buddha nature, right? And that interest is so fascinating, because if you were to ask somebody about their identification, who they are, right? Well, I'm this, I'm that, I'm whatever, and who they aspire to be, I doubt that you'd hear anybody say, I'm a bundle of resentments, right? and animosity and hatred, right? Like, that's not something that we think that we want to hold on to. But then when you know, when it comes down to, you know, down to the wire, right? When we actually have to contemplate these things, we recognize, oh, I want to hold on to that just a little bit longer, right? As Lama says, holding on to that burning coal, right? We all have it. And some of us, like, we really hold it on nice and tight. And sure, it's burning us, it's hurting us, right? But somehow, like, we're so attached to it, we can't let it go, we can't drop it.
Yeah. Well, there's something in that where it's like, we're feeling something, and there's something about that stimulus of being able to feel that is really powerful. I I oftentimes, when I get into like these kind of depression dips, sometimes that feels better in a certain way than what I've been previously going through, which is just kind of blah, like just neutral, just not even feeling anything. But to feel depressed and to be like, oh wow, like this music, like Elliott Smith, like actually feels sad again. It's like,
Right. That's right.
right? Like, and so it's kind of, it's this it's a trip that where I can get carried along by this feeling, or like what you're saying, these resentments, where for a moment I can feel like there's something real I can latch onto that then reflects, oh, that's who I am. Then if that's that, then this is who I am. And I've been really reflecting on that, on how, like, this identification with our resentments, and our traumas and whatnot. um in my experience, like, I feel very sad about that, right? Because there's ways that I just notice that, like, in some ways I'm acting out the various traumas that I've experienced, because I've, somehow created my personality around, like, being against that, or wanting to change or avoid or whatever. And so it's like, well, but isn't that just kind of like just having the trauma behind me all the time, you know?
That's
Um,
fascinating. Would you be willing to share any examples? I'm curious. I think I sort of intuit what you're saying.
yeah.
Is
Well,
there?
yeah, I mean, I think there's ways that it's definitely gotten better with Dharma practice, but some ways that would really follow me were as like a young adult in my 20s. Um, I was constantly trying to figure out what other people wanted from me, and then trying to present that, really not knowing what I actually wanted. And I think that was, trauma from, yeah, trying to figure out in my confused, like, little kid mind, what my parents wanted from me. And our kind of, we had, there was some family conflict and difficulties and whatnot. And I think in my mind, I was just trying to figure out, as a small child, well, how do I make them happy so that,
Right.
I feel safe? And so then it's like a whole lifestyle of just trying to appease other people. um, and that is not a way to live. It's not a way to live.
No.
That's an empty way to live. But I've been really reflecting on, like, uh, all right, well, if I don't want those things, that traumas to define my life, then I need to again shine that awareness on it.
That's
Be
right.
willing to look at it. I used to be really scared, very scared to look at anything like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Speaking of scared, yeah. Go ahead.
no, it's isn't that fascinating, right? That we don't want to look at the stuff that's so close to us. It's our identity. It's like who we think we are, and
Right.
yet there's these aspects to it that we just don't want to see, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it reminds me. I remember there was a time period where I really wanted to meditate, and every time I went to go sit on my cushion, it would have this like repellent force, right? So my
Mm.
mind would be like, sit down, and I'd sit my ass in the cushion and bounce out of it as if there was like I'm not kidding. I mean, it was weird. It was like a strong, like somebody used the Jedi mind trick on me or something. You know what I mean? Like
Wow.
there was something like that where like there was like a force field pushing me away, and I was like, "Mama, what the heck, man?" Like I'm telling myself, "Go sit down." I go sit down, and then I like bounce out of there. I can't sit. I can't do it. And he just said, that's fundamental ignorance. We don't want to see it. We don't want to see it. We just don't, right? Yeah. And what is the it that we don't want to see? Well, right. It's ourselves, right? It's all this stuff, all this stuff.
The bundles of resentment that we've been talking about.
That's right. Right. Yeah.
So I that's say, again, yeah.
Oh, go ahead. No, go ahead.
But just that where that self-forgiveness comes in is, can I forgive myself for one, for not wanting to look, and then two, for holding on? Can I forgive myself for holding on so much and for not forgiving? Yeah. Because the torture that creates is such harm to us. But yeah, I have to forgive myself.
I think sometimes, like, it's interesting, it's similar to the Tonglen practice, how the recommendation is to start with yourself, and how actually, as our friend Maria said, sometimes that's the hardest person to work with. And I wonder if maybe, at least I think in my case, and probably many other people's cases, it's probably maybe best to start by like looking at other people and forgiving them. You know what I mean? It might be easier. Yeah. It might be easier to do. There's other stuff's pretty heavy. I think they are part of the same thing. They're part of the same continuance, right? Of like forgiving others, forgiving ourselves, noticing that there actually isn't much of a distinction between the two of them, right? But I wanted to, like, before I forget, there was this one quote that I saw by Jac Daniel that I thought was brilliant. I thought it was so cool. He was talking about how without forgiveness that we end up being chained to the past, right? So we remain caught in the hurt and pain of our history, he says. And then he says, this is like a quip that he attributed to somebody else, but he said, forgiveness means giving up all hope for a better past.
Damn it.
I like that. I really did. Forgiveness really means giving up all hope for a better past. Like, yeah, there it is. Like, let it, like, there.
That's really good.
Yeah.
And I can also see, like, okay, yeah, I can't change my past. Like, that's impossible. And can I shift my perspective so that I can just see it differently? So it's not that, like, shame and resentment that feels like such a burden. And it's so interesting that you bring up Jac Daniel, because there was a guided meditation that he has on YouTube on forgiveness. And I actually did this meditation. Gosh, it must be like 8 or so years ago, back before I really met the Dharma. And I had a really trippy experience while doing that meditation that really opened up a box of worms for me. Actually, Pandora's box. I was pissed about it, but I'm so glad that it happened. But yeah, it was, if you don't mind, I'll share just a little bit.
Yeah, do it.
So yeah, it's this like 20-minute meditation on forgiveness. And I had really not been meditating much, but I figured, I'm just gonna kind of get in a rhythm and whatnot. And this was maybe a couple years after I had my first like major mental health kind of like breakdown. And I was, kind of in my recovery, feeling good, feeling like things were okay. But when I look back, it's like, oh, there were warning signs that things weren't actually okay. But in this meditation, he asked you to consider different people to forgive. And so I'm, putting different people in my life in front of me and forgiving them. And it also gets to the self. And what happened in this meditation is that I heard what was probably my own voice, but what really freaked me out, say, "You're queer." And it was like I had the blinders on like this, like that was the thing that I didn't want to see, and that I didn't want to like forgive myself for, that I had like covered that up and, hurt myself in various ways because I didn't want that, and so it just like ripped it all open,
Oh.
and it was horrible.
Mm.
But it was like some of the best medicine, right, that you could ever experience. And so it was so interesting that that was a meditation on forgiveness, right?
Yeah.
Because in the moment, I did not experience that as forgiveness. I experienced that as horror, like sheer terror, right? Because I couldn't like accept this part of myself. But that was the opening of forgiveness for me, was that, no, you're gonna look at this. And like what you were saying about, we have to engage it. We have to uncover and acknowledge these things about ourselves and forgive, or decide to forgive. And I just at the time was not ready to work through the emotions or accept and heal or anything. But it was an opening, and it was one that I think had to happen. Otherwise, it probably would have remained in the shadows for a long time.
That's right. Sometimes the best medicine is to shine a little sunlight on it, right?
Yeah. So forgiveness is not just this, I think of it as this kind of like passive,
That's right. Yeah,
like
me too.
I'm giving this to you by forgiving you,
That's right.
But actually, like, God, it takes a lot of work, doesn't it? To get
It
to the
does.
point where it actually feels like you feel able to do it.
That's
There's a lot of work to get there.
That's the part that I find so fascinating about it, is that it's easy, actually. It's sort of a quaint little word. Oh, forgive. Oh, I forgive you for, whatever. But then when we really start to unpack it, it's sort of like at the heart of so much pain and suffering, right?
Yeah.
And then to realize, oh God, I'm holding on to that. I don't want to let it go. Right?
Yeah.
Like,
who will I be? Who will I be if I let that go?
oh my gosh, right?
Yeah.
Right. And I think it's fascinating, if you don't mind a slight shift, just because I think it's an interesting topic. In California, at least, we have collective forgiveness attempts at it happening right now. And I know that it has stirred the pot for some, and that is the California Reparations Task Force. Have you heard about this?
I just saw that. Yes. Amazing.
Yeah. So first of all, how cool is it, right? To have a reparations task force. A lot of people didn't like that in the first place, but I think it's such a cool thing. Just that alone. It speaks volumes, right, about intention, and talk about uncovering and acknowledging some stuff. That's sort of a first step, and I think it's such a beautiful thing. I don't know what's going to happen with it, but I thought it was so cool because I was thinking about how the process is actually quite similar for collective forgiveness, as it is for individual and personal forgiveness, right? And that there's this, on the one hand, there's not the whole forgive and forget thing does not apply, right? Like when we're talking about the way that, the dominant culture has, treated minorities and whatnot, we don't want to forget that stuff, right? Because it's still happening. It's still going on, right? So forgetting it, shoving it, oh no, it's all better now. Like, let's just pretend like there's no problem. That's not going to work, right? And that it actually the recommendation was to start with a formal apology, right? Recognition, like, hey, this is an apology and a commitment to not repeating those harms, right? And how that's like when asking for forgiveness, that's a really important thing to acknowledge. Hey, I hurt you, right? I promise I'm not going to do this again. I'm going to do everything I can to make it not happen again. And then the second part is, how do we make it right? Right? How do we make another person or another being or another group of people, or however you want to look at it, how do we make you whole, or try to make it right? Right? That's where the reparations part comes in. Right. I find that part really fascinating, right? There's a lot of resentment. That's why people, we're talking about how hard it is to do forgiveness on our own level, both with ourselves and with people in our lives. But my goodness, there's a lot of people that are not ready to either ask for forgiveness or to get forgiveness.
Right, for
Right? A
sure.
lot of people right now on both sides of the equation, on all sides of the equation, would like to hold on to the hatred, the animosity, all of that stuff, right? Or pretend like it never was there.
Right,
And
because
that's
there's so
what is
much pain. Yeah.
so much pain. And I have to say, like, I'm really sort of proud of the
Oh yeah.
state of California for at least having the willingness to have this task force, right? I'm not like trying to get political or anything. I just think that that alone is so cool, right? Like it's an
Yeah.
attempt. It's an attempt to try to, to heal the pain, right? Bridge the gap, to get some harmony within our community, right? And to not just sort of like brush stuff under the rug as we
Right.
oftentimes want to do with things that have hurt us in the past, but to actually acknowledge it and then to like move forward, integrate that into our lives and move forward in a meaningful way.
Right. Yeah, that is such a profound aspect of forgiveness, is that willingness to say, oh yes, I did do this. And just imagine, how much healing could happen, if as a culture we were able to say that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
genuinely say that and want things to be different. And I think, we look at so many of the issues that we're facing as a country, like how much just horrendous violence we see, and so much of it is about identity-based violence, and I think it really could be tied back to this very thing that we get so closed up about. Nope, we did not. No, we're not harmful. We haven't done anything.
I didn't do that.
I have a right to be here. Yeah, and exactly. I didn't do that. Yeah, maybe I could say that maybe my ancestors did a little bit of that, but yeah.
All of that. Yeah, it is. That's the thing. That's what's so interesting about it, is that, like we've been talking about throughout the whole show, is that it's real close to us. The stuff like this, the whole notion, both of collective forgiveness, forgiving other people and forgiving ourselves. I don't know that there's a huge separation there, right? Because it all comes down to this identity. And what is that identity? The identity is the same mud that's covering that precious Buddha nature, right? And not wanting to let it go. So we're like, how do we become Buddhas? Well, I'm not going to forgive. That's for damn sure, right?
Right. And who would we be if we let go of all of that resentment, all of that shame, that our culture is covering up, that we as individuals are covering up?
Yeah.
Who are we supposed to be? We're supposed to be Buddhas. That's who we're trying to be. And that's who we are. We are that.
Yeah. If we could just let it go, and we can let that stuff go.
Yeah. It's not us. We don't need to identify with all of that harm and shame that we feel. We need to remember. We need to remember it.
Go for it. Go for it.
But yes, to forgive. Yeah, that's it.
We can forgive ourselves for having identified with it as well.
That's true.
And I think that's it, right? It's like,
we have to.
Yes,
they would have to, yeah.
All of this hurt, all of this pain, all of this suffering came from confusion, came from ignorance, right? And you know what? Like, okay, right? Yeah, that was me. Jac, I'm sorry. I've been confused, ignorant. I still am. And I'm okay, right? I'm okay with that. I'm going to move forward. I'm going to try to make things better as I move forward.
Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful. Yeah. I love that as a statement to just kind of, just remind ourselves. And that, I'm not perfect. I'm not perfect. I'm working towards, fulfilling these aspirations of mine. And how beautiful, beautiful that we can.
Wow. And we're polishing up that gem little bit by little bit.
Oh, Daniel, this has been a really heart galvanizing. I was going to say heartwarming, but I think actually I feel somewhat galvanized, right? That
Yeah,
it's like,
me too.
gosh, I feel like I can put this into action.
That's
It's
right.
really
We can do this. We're doing it. We're gonna do it.
Yeah,
We're gonna keep doing it. It's as we keep saying, it's a process, right?
it
And
is a process.
we're gonna do it. Hey, if this cyclical existence is anything, if we're gonna have this highs and lows, ups and downs, ones and zeros, on and off, and all of that, this duality, right? This cyclical nature. Well, then let's cycle over let's right. Talk about polishing. That's how you do it, right? Keep
Yeah.
what is it? Wax on, wax off,
Wax on,
right?
wax off. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. There's
All right, my
something there.
friend.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Daniel. And thanks everybody. We look forward to seeing you next week.
All right. Catch you later. Bye.
Okay. Bye.